Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phyllis Italiano. I'm a resident of Springs, and I am presenting to you another in our series called The Democratic View. And today I have with me Debbie Klughers. And Debbie is not only running on the Democratic ticket, but she's also running on the Working Family line as a trustee. And I did interview Debbie once before, so we know a little bit more about her. But she has such an interesting background that I think it behooves us to probe a little bit deeper into what she brings to the table as a trustee. And I wanted to ask you to explain something about your training and your background.
Okay. My educational background is that I have a degree in environmental studies from Stony Brook University. I earned 2 minors, one in marine science and one in sustainability studies. And currently I am almost completed with my master's degree in marine conservation and policy. I have 2 more classes left that I'll be completing in the spring, and I'm just taking 1 credit this semester. I think that was enough, with everything else I've going on.
Yes.
I've got a lot. I do a lot of stuff. I grew up in Hampton Bays. Spent my whole life, in and around in the water, whether on boats or swimming, fishing, clamming, all those great things at the Shinnecock Canal and down at Penny Point, and the old Shinnecock Bridge was how we got over to Dune Road, and now I guess I wasn't totally satisfied with just being on the water. I am a PADI certified rescue diver, so I do a lot of scuba diving locally. I dove here. A lot of people dive like in the Caribbean and such, because it's cold. It's high tidal action here. There's low visibility, but that's what I learned to dive in. So I dove a lot out here, and it's beautiful. And I've recently I went to Bermuda. I've been down to South Caicos, a little island by Haiti. The Bahamas, that kind of thing, Florida. So I just love to be. It's amazing what you see down there. Even like the interactions between a little fiddler crab and just the little interactions between the fish, and they come. They're so curious. I'll tell you a story about a turtle. I was diving in Venice, and we were about 2-3 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe 40-50 feet of water, and a turtle just came. A giant turtle just came right up to my face. And we were eye to eye, and I at first thought it was terrific, but then I thought this might not be the best, so I just kind of gave her a little nudge up, to make her not, the face-to-face was a little bit intense, but she came right back around, and I was able to, just put my hand across her carapace, and then off she went. So it was, that was like, I was so lucky, like she came to see me. It was pretty neat in the whole Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, it was pretty neat.
Wow, that's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Yeah.
What a moment that
and
must have been.
Fish come around and they're very curious. It's very interesting. That they come around and they swim with you. It's very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, and sharks. They're just curious. They're not.
I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about with your undergraduate degree.
Okay.
What does it, when you say you have a degree or a minor in sustainability, what exactly is that about?
Sustainability studies is the looking at the needs of today while remembering the needs of tomorrow. So we want to have what we have for today. We want to keep our beautiful town. We could talk about globally, but let's locally. We want to keep East Hampton beautiful. But we want to make sure that future generations can enjoy what we have today. And with the environmental aspect of that, I was able to learn a lot of interactions between man, the environment, and the economy. So the whole thing is kind of all integral to remember all those facets. It's not save the environment at all means. I do not believe that at all. I believe that we need to look at the needs of the people, look at the needs of the environment and the cost, and make a good little package that's good for everybody. I have a new saying that I made up. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone else say it, but I think this is not your grandfather's East Hampton, this is your children's East Hampton. and, we'll be gone, and what we leave for them, whether it's, shoreline hardening, if we continue, which we're not going to do here in East Hampton, but groins and hardened structures, that causes a lot of more erosion, to neighboring properties and stuff, and it could make our beaches disappear forever. So, the things that we do today, we have to really think, and we're smart, we know a lot more today than we've known in the past, so we need to think about, how this will affect not only us, but what we're going to leave for the future. And that goes with fisheries and, anything really. We have to look at our water, our fresh water, the quality of our oceans and our bays and our harbors. We need to...
Let's talk about the quality of our water, because I am a swimmer. I'm not...
You are. You're like a mermaid.
I'm not a really good swimmer, but I am devoted to being in the water.
How deep you go? About up to there?
I never swim anymore since I've almost died in the Atlantic Ocean 4 times. I never swim any deeper than my hand can't touch the bottom. That's my new motto.
That's nice.
But
Better
I go
safe
in.
than sorry. There you go.
I mean, my last swim was
not too
Monday.
long ago. Oh boy.
So
it's chilly.
Yeah, it is chilly. It's chilly.
Do you have a little wetsuit or something?
No,
you should get a little
no,
dive skin. That'll just give you a little more time.
I don't want to do that. I want to go in that water. And, I always say, hard to get in, hard to get out. That's my saying. So tell me about the quality of our swimming water.
Well, I think we're pretty good here, except for we're not immune to the problems that are not only all over Long Island, but globally. We had, I think in 2009, a DEC mandate to implement the MS4 program, which is talking about stormwater abatement, and we had to come up with a plan because a number of our water bodies were deemed uncertified. They had pathogens, high levels of pathogens in them, so we have to come up with a way to treat our stormwater. So that's, I think it was Acabonic 3 Mile, and I'm not sure the third water body that we're,
Sag Harbor. There's one in Sag Harbor that's... Really has.
Well, we're more Sag Harbor Bay. East Hampton trustees have, that jurisdiction in Sag Harbor. But I don't know about the Sag Harbor Bay, and Gardner's Bay is good because it's big and it's flush and stuff like that. But our harbors and our, like Hog Creek and our, bodies of water that rely on dredging and such to keep that water flushing are the ones that, I'm more concerned about. And a lot of the problems, not only road runoff is probably the least of our problems. The most pressing issues facing our ecosystems today is septic effluent coming from our human waste. And, especially waterfront homeowners, they're, it just makes sense that this stuff is going to end up percolating into our waters.
Of course.
And, these things lead to... Now, we're doing we're pretty much okay here in East Hampton right now, but just 20 miles to the west, the whole South Shore estuary of Long Island was deemed impaired by the DEC due to septic contamination. And, the heavy loads of nitrogen and even phosphates, but that's more important in freshwater systems, are causing, excessive algae blooms. The algae dies, it settles to the bottom, it dies, it decomposes, eats up the oxygen as it decomposes, and it causes these dead zones, these hypoxic areas, and the clams and the shellfish and all that. So we just have, I think that we're smart enough now in East Hampton that we could start implementing programs that could stop the progression of excess nitrogen and eutrophication into our waters by hopefully increasing shellfish and eelgrass beds, and even menhaden, our filter feeders, so to filter our waters naturally, because we're not going to stop putting the septic into it. We're not going to stop, we may divert the road runoff and stuff, but it's the septic contamination. We're not going to stop that right now. Maybe 20, 30 years down the road, Suffolk County will, or hopefully sooner. I'm just all over the place, but Southampton is working on a lot of new initiatives for homeowner septics being tested every 5 years, and even like Cape Cod, they test every 1.5 years or 2 years. So we need to get on the ball with doing things that we can implement to help stop future problems. And one of the natural and probably cost-effective would be to increase our shellfish, oyster gardens, increase our, we have a great clam mariculture here in East Hampton, but we need to do more of it in order to do pollution mitigation, and then not only to help filter the water, but to give to the fishermen, to give back to nature, to have more of these species in our local waters. And the eelgrass is integral. We've gotten rid of our eelgrass. I think 90% of it is gone across Long Island, and it's due to nitrogen. There's a whole chemical interactions. If it's not algal blooms, it causes, hydrogen sulfide and all this stuff. But yeah, but we have time. That's what, we have time, I think, to, with a lot of proactive restoration of our coastal ecosystems and keeping those waters clear. And then, we talk about fresh water too. That's a whole other whole other story.
So now you've told me a lot of information. I don't know if I got it all, but there were a couple of points that I think in order
and don't forget the winter flounder. Although they're not a filter feeding species, they're very important to our ecosystem dynamics. And yeah, well, they're kind of going the wayside, and I think their problems are perhaps overfishing, predation. You pick up a striped bass, you catch a striped bass, that belly's filled with baby sea robins and baby flounders and little baby fluke in the summer months. So the striped bass are doing so well that they're eating up what nature intends them to eat. So we have to try to strike a balance and stuff like that.
It's a good word. But let me get back to some of the things that you talked about. First of all, the word pathogen. Would you explain that word to people?
Something that can cause disease.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right, that's good. That's simple. Now, when you were talking about the septic systems and the cesspools and the waste of the cesspool, but there are other things that people can do besides to lessen the stress on the water, the groundwater that percolates. Like, why don't you tell us something about some of those things that people can do? Besides the fact that we also have to maintain our septic systems by our cesspool.
If there was, people that have cesspools, I think there should be some sort of a incentive to help them upgrade to a better system. I mean, they don't have a lot to choose from right now. Suffolk County is pretty stuck in their old ways of, if someone came to them with a new state-of-the-art type of system, they're not approving them because maybe they don't have all the data and the backing or whatever. But maybe people with cesspools, we used to allow oil tanks to be filled, and they gave you like $800 or something. Maybe we can.
I did it.
Okay, good for you. Maybe something like that to help these people, because it's a lot of money, to do something like that, and that could only help. Low flush toilets to stop. So the less that you could have going into the system, I think would probably be good. Just knowing where your system is the first thing, to know that you have what type of system you have, to know where it is, what kind of condition it is in, stuff like that.
That's a good question. I would like to ask you that. How would you find out if you bought a house that somebody else owned or several people owned?
The first thing is where your waste line comes out of your house. You can go into your basement or whatever, and there's a big line, and then you could follow that. And also on your survey. It should absolutely be on your survey. So, but it might be hard to actually exactly where it is, like if you had an overflow or whatever, so it's a good thing to know where it is, the condition it's in, that it's properly sized for your home. Now, if, if we have like new apartment legislation that comes into this community that, some people might be proposing that, are those systems adequate to have, 5 extra people in a home? Are these systems going to be overworked, and can the ground handle it? And we're drinking well water next to, my well water is contaminated with coliform. I'm on public water, and that's just the way of the future.
Just contaminated with chlorine.
Which is absolutely, and chlorine is a toxin,
Yes.
Naturally occurring chlorine is, but, it's
Yes,
it's what do we do?
I
We have to treat this earth a little kinder, I think, and look to, it's a thing. I don't think people, so the sustainability is looking toward the needs of the future. I think in the past we looked toward the needs of today, which is okay, but I don't think that we really thought out in planning and in the environment.
I call it looking around the corner.
Oh.
It's
that close.
Yeah, that's what you have to do when you do anything, is you have to look around the corner. What is the effect of it?
And that's sustainability. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that goes even to your own personal health, diet, and exercise, and things like that.
True.
So, and the eelgrass. Now, the eelgrass has died off because of the eutrophication?
Well, that's what some of the scientists are saying. There was also some kind of a fungus in the 80s, I think. So was it a combination of, poor water quality? If the water is not clear, the sunlight can't penetrate down to the eelgrass and it can't thrive. Could it be from, because the algae causes poor water quality?
Yes.
And then the brown tide that came and wiped them out? So I mean, it's a whole bunch of things. So I'm not really sure. I mean, excess nitrogen that doesn't cause algal blooms can cause, a lot of it, like hydrogen sulfide and loss of salt marshes and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a whole, I don't think you can pinpoint one thing, and I don't think they have, but they are narrowing in. But I don't see any problem with attempting eelgrass restoration, while we're attempting, more shellfish to clean the water, more eelgrass will also, they take, like any plant, they need nitrogen. So they take these things out of the water naturally. And this stuff was here for centuries, this what was here, and we've effectively destroyed it, and then we're seeing all these, we had a red tide that you and I spoke about in Southampton that kills people. Paralytic shellfish poisoning caused by, if you eat a clam contaminated with this little tiny microscopic, stuff, you can die, and that's terrible. That's terrible.
Well, I will say, Debbie, it did scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, I know, and I just wanted you to be careful, I don't know if you knew and you didn't know.
No,
that the waters were closed to shellfishing, and then the lobsters ended up having some of that in them as well, and it moved up the food chain. It's like,
and
what do we do?
Not only did we not know about it, but it wasn't anywhere, except I think there was one little thing in the Long Island paper that
it's on the DEC websites, but who's to know? Shall I go search the website of the DEC to find out what's going on? It needs to be more. Yeah, but I mean, public education, public knowledge, and like you're saying, what can the public do? Just being, even with energy efficiency, I mean, that's another big thing. We're burning up all these fossil fuels, causing ocean acidification and climate change and all these things. I mean, we have global problems, but I always think that people can help. But I think we're also at the point that the government, I don't know how popular this will be, but the government needs to help us. They need to give us grants, subsidies, education.
Yes.
The government needs to be the showing us what to do. Put those solar panels up. Don't, fight about wind turbines. Just do it. Because what are we going to do when there's something called peak oil, where we think we're at peak oil and there's only 50 years left or something. So here we are hydrofracking to get natural gas. I mean, we're just, cutting the tops off of mountains to get the oil shales. We're just doing everything we can to get this fossil fuel. What's wrong with the sun? And the sun powers the planet.
And what's wrong with going deep into the earth where that what you have down here, the geothermal, is forever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's expensive, though. Geothermal's expensive, and well, they all are.
It's like everything. My brother-in-law bought a Volt and told me.
Oh, it's a car?
Yes, and said, I asked him how much. He said, well, how much it was, and he said, but wait 3 years, it'll be cheap.
Absolutely. I got a price for solar probably 5 years ago, and it was $78,000. It would not have fulfilled our needs because I have 4 children. Back then, all 4 were at home, and they used a lot of, it's always turn off the lights, and the little games and their television and their blow dryers and all that. But now I got another quote just maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I think it was $23,000 or $28,000, something like that. So the prices have come down. So please, anybody that's interested, go get another quote if you got one in the past, or just get your first quote. And just to get an idea, there are incentives, tax incentives. You can, basically, I think we would have been able to power about 85% of our home if we can come up with $28,000 to do this, but we're exploring some other options, like actually trying to do it ourselves. My husband's in construction, and he could do anything. So we're kind of trying to think about that.
Okay. Now I wanted to also ask you. I know there's some difficulties going on with when your septic system is pumped, what happens to it?
Well, sometimes it gets pumped and it goes to our East Hampton scavenger waste facility. And this is a unique type of facility that there's not an awful lot of places like it. It takes direct septic. It's not treated, it's just from your home to the facility. It's about 100 times more concentrated than the waste that you would find going into sewage treatment plants and such. The facility currently has been in noncompliance with the DEC 12 of the last 12 quarters. They exceeded mercury last year by 6,000%. The effluent gets discharged somehow onto the ground. Where does it go? It percolates down. We have a sole source aquifer. So I'm not really sure. I know that the town has to do something, and I believe they will do something, and I hope that they're going to do the right thing for us for the future. We need to treat our own waste. I'm not for shutting down the facility, because as a sustainable community, we need to treat our waste. This is our waste. We can't be trucking it off into somebody else's backyard. I mean, if we can.
Well, they're practically full anyway, so we do have to bite the bullet and do something about our
right.
own place.
And there are things that we can do. I know the current supervisors have been talking about bringing some type of sewage treatment to Montauk, and people might get confused of that having to do with increased development. It's not about let's do sewage treatment, now we can increase development. I don't think that's where he's going with it. We need to treat what we've got today. We're not saying let's build a sewage treatment plant so that we can increase density. I think that he's interested because Lake Montauk has been recently found to have fecal coliform in it. They tested the waters in the last 6 months or something, and lo and behold, there it was.
Wow.
So yeah, so I think that those type of initiatives are important. And as a coastal community, we've got unique, groundwater structures and such, and Cape Cod is doing pretty well. We've got a similar type of geography and such, and coastal resources. So there are things out there, and I think that our leaders of this town will look to do the right things for these types of problems.
And speaking about leaders of the towns, as a trustee,
Candidate.
Candidate for you. I've already voted, so I'm sure you're going to make it. So can you just tell us exactly what the role of the trustee is?
Basically, the trustees are historically have been involved with land grants, managing land, doling out land, and I've been doing a little bit of study. It's basically a land patent. It's we had to pay quit rent to the king, and stuff like that. And it was and then as the trustees doled out the plots of land, and what they have left is what they manage for the good of the commonality and the freeholders of the town of East Hampton. So they manage the beaches, the harbors, dredging. If you have a dock or a bulkhead or something that you need to repair, a stairway, a lot of the waterfront homeowners have a lot of interaction with the trustees because they're on the water and they want to do certain things, and they have to come before the trustees to get those things going. Way back, the trustees were in charge of cranberries, chopping wood, anything that had to do with meadows and fields, they were in charge of it for the good of all. There were actually 12 original trustees. And it's interesting, I want to find out how, there were 12 trustees, 2 bay constables, and 2 assessors. We got rid of the constables. Who would be our code enforcement for the trustees today? So maybe we should bring back a constable to help the trustees, because I've asked, when you get a permit, say for mass gathering on the beach, who goes and makes sure that you're complying by the terms of the mass gathering? The trustees say no balloons, the tents need to be taken away. They have certain, requirements of your mass gathering. Well, who goes and makes sure that you're doing that? Well, nobody. Who goes and, if there's a fence erected illegally, or if, these things are happening, as opposed to code enforcement, why don't we bring back our constables that we had back in, into the 70s? And at some point they I guess got into the realm of Marine Patrol, but people call code enforcement, so it's kind of confusing in that aspect. But we had 2 assessors, 12 trustees, 2 bay constables, and now we have 9 trustees. So I'm interested in finding where along the way we lost 3 of them. It's just I'm interested in certain things like that.
Well, I also was wondering, by the way, just want to
And also
mention-
mariculture, trustees in mariculture, public education, stuff like that, which I would like to see an increase of both.
Do they ever do anything about beach cleanup?
I'm not sure. That's been a question. We do have, I think, 2 beach raker machines. One is used a lot in Montauk, and I'm not sure. I don't know, Phyllis. I'd have to look into that, but I think they should. I think they should.
I mean, is it going to be somebody else besides me? Because every time I'm down at the beach, I'm always picking up little bits of things, you know, and putting it on my towel.
But it's not even that people so much are throwing all this stuff out. I went down to Gardiner's Bay, and I was going to go pick up some shells and such. But instead, I picked up a whole bag of garbage, spark plugs, cable vision things, anything you could. And I have it all I have a beach scene in the front of my yard, so I put all that garbage right there. My house was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's the beach scene. It's got to have all this garbage on it because it's just." So I don't know. It's not that people are. It's washing up is my point.
Yes,
it's also it's a lot of it's just washing up. The sea is filled with garbage. It's filled with trash.
I see it on a windy day that you can see more stuff
filled
coming
with
off
plastic. It's a global. It's a
absolutely.
global problem, and it's only getting bigger. The sea is filled with plastic, 50-year-old plastic.
So I just would like to remind folks that you are running for trustee
I'm running.
along with 8 other people who
That's
are
right.
unique, who have a passion,
They do.
and who each have their own real focus on our lands and our beaches,
They
which, Tim Bishop was here one time and he said to me, the environment is our economy.
Yes.
And the economy is our
And
environment.
it's true. I mean, we're in a unique, beautiful, beautiful place.
Without the beaches and the flat land and the farms and the vistas, we don't have
Beautiful.
much, and people aren't going to come here.
No.
And that's going to take away all of the money that fuels all those other small
That's
businesses.
right. And we want to keep it. We want to keep it this way for future generations to enjoy.
Thank you for the education.
Thank you, Phyllis.
You are wonderful. I
You're
love
wonderful.
Your knowledge. It's incredible. I learn from you every day, Debbie.